Despite the hype, and let's face it, there has been a lot of that, IoT seems like a market still heavily engaged in trying to find itself. We know in general what technologies will drive and enable it, hopefully, and we think we know the huge promise and the sheer range of use cases which could be applied. But try and delve beyond that and it all gets fuzzy again, or so we think. So we went to Internet of Things World in Berlin in October, armed with questions about what has emerged as IoT's current hotspot and, perhaps, its key enabler: low power, wide area radio networks. In search of clarity, we asked Mark Burton, Strategic Channel Manager at Actility and maker of core network software for LoRa networks, what in his view was the most pressing IoT issue.
Probably the most pressing issue is the diversification of standards, the use of different technologies and frequency ranges to enable communications between the different sensors. There's a lot of concern around how standards are going to merge, if standards are going to merge, and that whole area, in fact.
Omar Elloumi was at the event representing 1M2M. He's also from Alcatel-Lucent Bell Labs, and for him, one pressing IoT problem is silos.
You take the example of smart cities. You go to conferences, you will see that people will speak about verticals in the smart city: smart parking, energy, waste management, street light management. But there are no communication between those. And the whole vision of semantic interoperability is to bridge the gap and make sure that those applications talk to each other.
Standards responsibilities are also in a state of flux.
There is still some confusion about the role of different standards organizations. People sometimes compare apple to pears, and they have to position the different standards organizations in the right spots.
And standards interoperability is a problem for Mark Burton too.
The major issue within IoT is the speed of the development of the different architectures that are being used and the need to start looking into interoperability between the standards. IoT covers a wide range of different use cases, and each use case has its own set of criteria that needs to be addressed. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how the market changes to accommodate multiple standards.
On the other hand, if IoT is going to be as diverse and all-encompassing as we think it will be, we will probably need different technologies to suit, and different radio standards to go with them. Here's Andrew Kokhanovskyi, CTO of CyberVision.
I think, there is so much diversity in IoT right now because IoT is a huge catch term for just everything. My own definition of IoT is essentially it's uncovering the hidden data and making it available for the new business processes, new revenue streams, new data understanding, new knowledge. This is what IoT is about. But in general, IoT is just everywhere around us. So I'm not sure whether such a huge space can be consumed by any single vertical.
And here's Aapo Markkanen, Principal Analyst at Machina Research.
I think ultimately the market will decide. I mean, it's a cliche, but it's true. So I think many of them, they address somewhat different use cases. So they're kind of the unique selling points. They are different from each other. So then it kind of just depends on how big an addressable market you ultimately can capture. But I think there's certainly there's space for more than one of them.
I asked Omar, what's the best way forward on standards adoption at this stage?
If you are building large-scale deployments, and if you do that based on a limited set of vendors or a small ecosystem, then you are probably looking yourself for future evolutions. Because today you can figure out one or two applications, but IoT is about proliferation of applications. So if you limit yourself with smaller ecosystem, then you probably are looking yourself to that ecosystem.
Despite all the analyst head-scratching and report writing, we don't really have a clue about how many billion devices will be out there in 5 years' time, or what radio technologies will be guiding all the data into the cloud. But then maybe we're expecting too much. Perhaps we should be content to file IoT under the Rumsfeldian category of known unknowns, with the hope that no unknown unknowns are lurking in the undergrowth.
There are enough standards and standards-based technologies and open source out there to allow you to go and make your deployments with open standards and open source. it's possible already today, and my message is don't lock yourself to an ecosystem.
Here's Andrew Kokhanovskyi with the final word.
It's the unknown unknowns right now. Many people keep talking, for example, about IoT security, and we understand what the security threats are, but we don't know what the model for fighting these threats will be, right? And it's one thing to just connect the device. It's another thing to implement policies to control this device, to secure access to this device, to control the distribution of information. It becomes especially hard and especially important when we are talking about very sensible data, such as like human health data, right? Like medical records, things like this. So we have all these like HIPAA standards from the past, right? But now they are getting a new sense in this new reality created by the Internet of Things. And the largest threats to IoT right now is probably mapping these old standards and old ways of dealing with things into the new reality, which is ultimately totally uber connected, essentially.